Okay, so if you are starting your sonnet creative response, that means that you have gone through, you've looked up everything in your sonnet. My dog is trying to get my attention. Hi, buddy. No, you can't. Okay, well, here's a cameo. There's Oscar. Okay, now go away. We're busy. So, anyway, what you're going to be doing is you will have already gone through your basic, you have an understanding of it, all right? Now, this is how you break it down so that you actually have some basis, because when you go to do this, you got to remember that the most important part is your you can make the most beautiful thing on earth, but if you can't explain it to me and actually bring it back to the text, which is what this whole thing is about, if you can't find textual evidence, then you can still not get a good mark, right? And similarly, if your thing looks like crap, but you have a really good argument as to why you chose the things you chose, and you can show me this, you can still get a good mark, all right? So this is what you want to be looking for. You want to be looking for the verbs, and we've talked about this before in your manifesto assignment. You want to be looking for action verbs specifically, and you want to be looking for images that you can use because you're creating something, and most of you are going to end up creating a visual image kind of thing. But so if I was doing Sonnet 130, which, if you recall, is my mistress, eyes are nothing like the sun. Right? One of the important things that to know about this is that the structure of this sonnet is a comparison. So I already know that the verbs in this sonnet are actually really weak. They're all passive because it's my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Her skin is, why if her then black wires grow from her head. Okay, so grow is an active verb, and it doesn't matter if it's messy. Okay, you can show me this work and it'll be fine. So grow is an active verb, but it's really just talking about the black wires on her head. There's lots of passive verbs because the big thing to know about this is that the structure is that of a comparison. And knowing that it's a comparison leads me to the images, because in this poem, My Mistress' Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun, you have contrasting images. So for my project, if I'm going to do this as a project, there's my mistress, and then there's the ideal. Because basically the basic core of Sonnet 130 is my mistress is not perfect, right? She's not the conventional beauty, and yet I think her more beautiful to me than anyone else in the world. I mean, that's the basic idea. And it's also, extremely humorous, and that's about tone. So when I'm looking at that, then I have to go through the images. Well, okay, the ideal is fair, i.e. white and blonde. But my mistress has black wires, and these are the images that you see. This is like literally black wires growing on her head instead of blonde. Her breasts be done meaning dull or actually kind of brown. So like it's not the ideal at the time to have brown. They want really white skin. So done being like, when I translate that, it comes out to brown or beige or tan, something along those lines. Okay. When I look at, then it says roses damask cheeks, so rosy cheeks, but she doesn't have rosy cheeks. And then there's a line about the breath from my mistress reeks, right? So that's like a pretty descriptive thing. Breath reeks. And then you've got, all these different things. Like, so you have this comparison of the two things. So because of the structure of the sonnet, and because the verbs are mainly passive verbs, and the only really active verb is love, because love is an act, but it's not, it's sort of an in-between. It's an abstract verb, which we haven't really talked about much, but it's an ideal. It's really not hard. Like, everybody thinks they know what it is, but we all have different definitions of it. That's kind of how that goes. So I can, however, find images from this. And this is where I get away from, because I'm a visual learner, I get away from listing the things, and I'm not doing the whole poem because I'm in a rush and I just want to show you. But out of what I've got reeks, black wires, blonde. So that's when I start, because I am kind of a visual person. This is where I start kind of sketching just ideas. But I'm not sketching. I'm just coming up with icons or images. And I get this image of her with like this black, wiry, almost Medusa kind of, she's cute, but like she has like, her eyes are a little too close together and her lips are breathing. I don't know. She's got like wiry wire hairs versus, the, I don't know, the bouffant kind of curly hair, or maybe straight hair. I don't know. I'm pretty bad at sketching for an art teacher, actually. I'm more of a painter. But this would be the pretty girl, I guess. I don't know. Let's just say she's the ideal, and then she's coming in, maybe she's bigger. And then there's a line in the poem about how this girl walks lightly, but the ground shakes when she goes by. So obviously she's a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna like make her a little bigger. Maybe not that big, but like, kind of bigger. Have her things go down. And then I'm just gonna start playing around with the idea. Like, this is the play around part. It's when you start coming up with ideas. So mine are pretty visual, but like, if you've got a really like the poem about, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, there's a ton of images on there. There's like images of the sun, there's images of death, because remember, death is always immortalized and shown with like a scythe and everything. And one other thing you can do too is, if you're not a sketcher, you can actually just try and find images online and like make like a Pinterest or something that shows all the images that are in your poem. Once you've got down the verbs and the images, because some of your poems are more like, when I think on think is a verb, it's an abstract think, but it does. And some of your poems are about jealousy and things like that. So, but really look at the verbs, look at the images, and just sketch out some ideas for yourself. Like, pull those words out of the poem. And you can use, if you're using a computer, you can use some of the extensions with Google Chrome will actually take the verbs out for you. So do that before you decide what you're doing. Now you're going to decide what you're doing. So what to make, because you're making a physical project, right? And you're presenting that project to me. So the rubric is attached to the assignment, and you can see it. I'm looking at how it's made and how you present it, and I'm mainly looking for your argument. So your options are pretty open, but I want you to consider your skills and your materials. If you're very good at sketching, then you're probably going to want to head towards art. If you're good at music, you want to head towards music. Here are some things that people have done in the past, and if you have another idea, you can run that by me. But don't totally decide what you're doing and start doing it until you've already done the looking through the verbs and the images. So for music, here's some options. One is you create a soundtrack. So the soundtrack, I need a physical thing to hold in my hands. I have these Super 8s tracks, but you could use a DVD cover. It doesn't matter. You don't have to physically make this soundtrack. You just have to have all of the tracks. So a minimum of 10 tracks. And for each track, you would explain how that track relates to your poem. And they can be pop songs, love songs, they can be hate songs, like whatever. But as it's your explanation. But I also need a visual thing, so that means it has a cover art of some sort. So if you were using you can use a tape case, Super 8 one. I've got I shouldn't say Super 8, it's an 8-track. You could use a DVD case, or you could use like whatever, but you're making a CD case, I mean, but you're physically making a thing that I can hold in my hand that has all of your music on it, and you're going to explain how that music is. Your explanation can be written if you don't like doing it verbally. Most students choose to do it verbally, but you can do it as a written explanation. You can rap, so you can perform it. There's 2 ways to perform it. You can rap it, but it has to be accessible to the class, which means you would record yourself rapping it, and I would broadcast it for others. Or you could set it to music. If you're a musician, you can create your own tune for the sonnet. And you're still going to have to do the explanation with me, but for the explanations for those, it would be much more along the lines of me questioning you after your performance. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? That's a little bit different. I've only had one person do this. For art options, I've had people do paintings in all kinds of media, whether it's acrylic or watercolor. Some people do comic strips, especially for one that tells a story. That can work out really well. I've had people do multimedia canvases. So multimedia means that you use collage, and this is actually really common. A lot of people do this. So you use collage, plus you paint, plus you put type, plus you put words, like type of some kind. And I have some examples of that, and you can get into you can look up multimedia. That's probably the easiest art one to do in terms of like not having a ton of art skill. Collage is probably the easiest, and in terms of not having a lot of music skill, the soundtrack's probably the easiest. I've had people do sculpture of all sorts, including paper mache. And other things that people have done, I've had people weld things. Some people want to do woodwork. You could make a video of your sonnet. That would be interesting. I don't know. I've never had anybody do that. And I'm adding TikTok. So, like, if you could do in 1 minute some kind of cool TikTok video, I don't know. I think it would be interesting, and I'd be interested to see it. And I said beat it because maybe I'll actually beat it. Dog, you need to be quiet. I'm teaching. He's just like, look at him. He's so pathetic. Oscar, I'm teaching. Go away. Anyway, so the next thing you really have to consider is your skills and materials, especially if you are doing this at home. If you've gotten stuff at school, well, the whole art room is available. But you need to look at what you have, right? So for me, if I was doing this, I would be like, well, I'm a good beater. I'll bead something. Because that would be like, anytime I see something that no one else has done before, I'm like, ooh, and there's bonus points involved in that. Like if you show me something no one else has ever done, that's pretty cool. So maybe I would beat it because that's my skills, and I have tons of beads and I have lots of materials, but I actually wouldn't choose beat it for the sonnet that I'm looking at, because the sonnet that I'm looking at is a comparison. If I was choosing for Sonnet 130, because 130 is a comparison, I think that the thing that I would probably choose to do would be multimedia. And it would look something like this. So it would be like a big poster, and it would be split, right? And I would have all of the mistress stuff versus the idea of the fair, or, you know, social whatever. And for me, doing this in a modern way means that I would go and I would get a bunch of Cosmo magazines or whatever. I don't read that crap anymore. It's bad for my mental health. But I would get all of those headlines that are like, you know, make your skin lighter. I don't know, like really awful stuff like that. I would just find, sadly, you can find a lot of that on the internet. I would print them all out and I would have them all be here. So this would all be like all of my social stuff, you know, like the society telling you, you know, how to look. And then here for the mistress, I would have all of the stuff that's like body positive movement, right? I would be like, okay, here's body positive. And I would have all different kind of women looking not like this ideal. And that would be my main, because that's the main idea of Sonnet 130. And then I would, of course, use the images that I'm pulling from there. Like black wires from her head, I think means that she has curly hair. And in the context of now, I would say natural black hair. Because there's this whole societal thing trying to tell black women that they have to straighten their hair. Right? So I think that that's how I would bring that in to make it more relevant. So that's kind of like how I would attack this, because it would be the easiest thing to do. But if I was doing like a soundtrack, I would definitely go in and I would try to find songs that were about, I think of Pink. I know I'm old, but I always think of Pink. And she has a lot of songs about feeling pretty and not feeling pretty, right? I wish I was Britney Spears, that kind of thing. I would find a bunch of those. Biff Naked, I Love Myself Today, maybe. But sort of like unconventional love songs is what I would be looking for if I was doing a soundtrack. So it really, you have to decide what appeals to you and how much time do you have to do this? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what's going on with you right now. So how much time do you have? I don't have time to be this thing, right? A collage like this might take me like 3 hours. And to do it really cool. And to have paint in it and type and all this different stuff. It would probably take me about 3 hours. The important part of this is, yes, I want it to look good. I don't want it to be mamacis. Like, I don't want it to look like you made it in 5 minutes. You will lose marks. It should look like you spent 3 hours on it at least. But, the main thing is, can you go back to when you present this to me and I ask you about the verbs and the images and all of those things and what is the main idea, you should be able to explain it to me. And I realize that this looks like a mess, but this is a representation of my thinking and my planning. And if you could show me your thinking and your planning, then that helps me evaluate what you're doing. So there's your lesson for today. Work on your Sonnet creative responses. That's the first assignment that you should be working on. And that's it. Okay, so enjoy your day. Bye.